25, breaks a couple of tackles, and look at him go! He could go all the way! Touchdown!
Winning is not a sometimes. It's an always. Winning is a habit.
What's up, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode of Gut Check Podcast. Sorry for the delay. We were off a week, but we are back. I'm your host, Matt Williams. With me, as always, good friend and co-host Seth Floyd Hansen, and the esteemed writer for the Niners Noise. How you doing this morning, man?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. Gaining more and more reputation, more and more clout in the writing world.
Yes.
Not really. It's been good. I think I've got 5 articles out right now. And it's pretty slow just because there's no football. The guy who's like our editor was talking to us the other day about how like usually the off season is slower, of course, which makes sense. But he said this is a particularly slow off season because like a lot of people don't even believe there's going to be a season, so people are just kind of disinterested a little bit. But it's cool. It's been a lot of fun. It's been busy, like trying to write and do everything else I've got to do, but it's been a ton of fun. So yeah,
I could imagine, man. And just to hit on the big news quickly, they already canceled the first exhibition game, which is kind of the extra preseason game, the Hall of Fame game, which is would have been the Cowboys and the Steelers. So yeah, it could be a sign of what's to come. It just at least shows that the NFL has been very persistent in that the season was going to happen. But now at this point, as we get a little bit closer, I don't know that 16 games is a 100% for sure thing.
Yeah, the only way, I hate to say this, the only way I think that like everything goes normal, like I think you can rule out fans in the stands at 100% capacity. You can rule that out for right now, for sure.
For sure.
The only way though you're gonna see a season on time with 16 full games and like just the way we expect it every year is not because the virus isn't going away before the end of the year. Like people aren't going to stop getting it. It's going to have to be something where people change the way they feel about the virus. Like Dr. Fauci or someone's going to have to come out and be like, okay, we're at a point now where like enough people have immunity to where, or like we know enough now that no one's, if you get sick, this is what you do and you should be fine. Like that to me is because right now you're just seeing all these numbers spiking because of all the protests and other things like, and whatever else. We've opened up the states, right? A lot of them. Yeah. So people are just getting it. And it's just a liability at this point, So, that's what it's going to have to change in people's minds. Like, all right, it's not as big of a deal as we thought, or we now know what to do if you get it type of thing. And I don't know, it's scaring me. That was pretty, it was pretty disheartening seeing that notification on my phone that they canceled the Hall of Fame game. Cause that's the first step that's made me feel like, oh shoot, this isn't going good. So
absolutely. That was the first thing that really hindered the NFL season.
Yeah.
The draft was virtual, but that was really no issue.
Right.
They ran that almost perfectly, besides Roger Goodell getting like more and more intoxicated or whatever that was as the draft went on.
That was awesome.
Which maybe just like kept viewers watching into the late rounds. But but then like from a actual football standpoint, the Hall of Fame game is pretty boring, I'll be honest. The Cowboys have played it before. I watch it. It's the fifth one for those teams. Yeah,
it's boring, but it's first
football.
Like NFL football. So like that first quarter, you're juiced. You're like, homie from Eastern Washington's got the ball. Like you're just so pumped, you don't care. So
it's the one chance to watch every undrafted free agent get on the field at the same time. Like you are scrubbing rosters to see who's actually on the field during this time.
your twos aren't even playing in that game a lot of times. Like if you're a rotational guy, you're not seeing the field. So but hey, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish the thought, and then I'll cut you off.
Yeah, thanks. I think it it could lead the way to on preseason, which is what I was going to get to. And I think there's always been talk about cutting preseason. So if you start cutting this game, I think this year there's not going to be any preseason games. I think that's very likely. And I think they would do that to help protect the regular season, to make sure you can have more of those games. So, and then that just makes a precedent for future years where you can scale back the preseason, which is what's always been talked about anyway.
Yeah. There was a report earlier this year after the draft about shortening it to 2 games this year. Perfect time to try it out. I could see why like teams don't want to do that, because you got to evaluate guys, and why if you're like a bubble guy, like you don't want that because you need to be on the field. But I imagine you can get what you need to know from camp, and I would hope there's at least one preseason game. I don't know if that's not enough, but I don't know. I feel like between camp and a preseason game where your 1s and 2s, the guys that are locks, and then just let everybody else play, and it's basically a tryout game, just to feel it out. But no, I think you're right. I think they had planned on possibly, like you said, shortening the preseason anyway. So it's not like we need to all freak out that the season's going to be canceled or anything, but because they were planning on probably shortening it. But I think it's just because it's the Hall of Fame game, and they're pushing back the Hall of Fame ceremony a year, so that's why it's kind of alarming, because this is kind of the first like, oh, the NFL is officially back kind of thing, and it's gonna be canceled. So I don't know, it's crazy, but
for sure, something we'll have to keep an eye on. And I mean, really, what affects the topic for today? We're talking college football, so if the NFL is in trouble, you better believe college football could be in trouble moving forward. We still don't know how every college is going to open up in the season. We have some camps reporting in for training, but all the news is just that these kids are still testing positive for coronavirus. You had about 30 in Clemson, over 20 in LSU, like 15 or so at Texas. So a lot still up in the air. I don't think we'll get too much into those details. We're just kind of obviously keeping an eye on it as fans and to stay hopeful. But what we're talking about today is if the season goes ahead as scheduled, with or without fans, if they're playing some meaningful games, we want to talk about some of those players that we're most excited about.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna just hope for the best and talk about guys that are going to make a splash in college football this year, hopefully, and hopefully things look fairly normal. I hope they do. We were talking as a coaching staff yesterday during our bye week going up. So one of our coaches is from Arkansas, like diehard, went to Arkansas, grew up there, coached there, and so during our bye week, the University of Arkansas is playing Alabama, and he was like, "It's going to be a slaughter, but we should all go." And And so we're talking about doing that. So I'm hoping that there's some normalcy and I can get my hands on some tickets possibly. But we're gonna think good thoughts on this podcast. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So the schedule for today, we'll hit on some of those big names that everybody knows, that everybody's getting hyped about, at least for Heisman, for national championships, for playoffs, that kind of stuff. We'll talk about those names. So we want to hit on some maybe lesser known, some sleepers, but really just people we're excited to watch about. I'm sure you'll know some of these names, but it's just who we're going to watch for and why. But before we get into that, obviously the biggest 2 names everyone's talking about right now, and for good reason, they are the Heisman favorites. You got Justin Fields out of Ohio State, and then Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson, 2 quarterbacks who's just been tearing up the league. And a little surprising to me, at least, was Justin Fields had the slight favorite for the Heisman at 7-2 odds over Trevor Lawrence, who's 4-1. So it's about 3.5 to 1 to 4-1. So real close. But those are your top 2 Heisman favorites.
I think that probably has to do a little bit with how Ohio State runs its offense. I'd hazard a guess that Justin Fields is going to have more rushing yards as well, which usually plays right, because the Heisman's kind of a statistical award to some degree. And Ohio State quarterbacks always do well, right?
Yeah.
Like, when was the last Ohio State quarterback that was just bad? There hasn't been one. Even, I mean, look, I don't want to. I've probably already announced on this podcast how I feel about Dwayne Haskins in Washington. Like, not a believer. Don't have much confidence in him. But like, when he was at Ohio State, they made him play well enough. He was a first round pick. So like, it's a little bit of a system. Now, if we're talking like who's my quarterback, like, I'm gonna be a Trevor Lawrence guy, from what I've seen him do in the national championship. He's just been there since he was a freshman, since what's his name? Bryant. Kelly Bryant. He left and transferred. Like, Trevor Lawrence came in and took over, and I've just really enjoyed watching him. But Justin Fields is going to have an amazing season, and if he wins the Heisman, not going to be surprised, obviously. Yeah. It also helps, man, when you play for Ohio State, just the name alone, right? Like, so much of that is influence. The Heisman's probably my least favorite award. It's like one of my least favorite awards in sports. Yeah, it really is. Ever since Christian McCaffrey did not win a Heisman at Stanford, it's mind blowing that he didn't win the Heisman. I've been kind of whatever about it, because there's clearly, I'm not saying people had it out for Christian. I'm just saying there's clearly other factors than just who is the best player in the nation. Yeah. And I think there's subconscious factors. I don't think people are like, Christian McCaffrey led in every possible offensive statistical category ever. But like, no one's thinking that way. I just think in their mind, subconsciously, they have a way of how they pick a winner, and it bugs me. So, but those two guys are the guys. That's what I feel. That's what I feel.
And to go on that, I think there is some bias in the Heisman, because as soon as your team loses like 3-4 games, you're pretty much out. I mean, even 2 is going to be a stretch when there's undefeated, 1-loss teams, stuff like that. So I think that hurt McCaffrey fairly or unfairly. I get your point for sure. And then now that all these quarterbacks are dual threat, you look at a running back who only has rushing yards versus a quarterback who has nearly as many rushing yards, if not as many, plus passing yards on top of that. So I get it. It is what it is. It's tough. I don't know when we'll see another running back or non-quarterback win, to be honest. But this could be the year, because I think one of the reasons Trevor Lawrence is a little bit lower than Justin Fields is because he has Travis Etienne returning for a senior year as a running back, when he could have gone, probably first round last year in the draft. So it'll be interesting to see how those two guys balance it out. Is Lawrence going to carry most of it? Will Etienne have a stellar year again and just kind of split reps, if you will, and kind of split the votes as well?
Sure. I think that Trevor Lawrence has came in, took the league by storm, won a huge national championship against Alabama, and then things kind of slowed down for him a little bit because there's so much film out there. And in college football, you play the same teams every season, minus 1 or 2. So they were going to catch up to him a little bit eventually. Most guys come in and they play 2 seasons, and then they go on to the league or whatever. They play 1 season, go on to the league, so they don't have that. I just think Trevor Lawrence has played so much football that it's slowed down a little bit for him, but I still think he's going to be he's going to have a great year. And then he's going to be an amazing NFL quarterback. Whereas Justin Fields, last year was his first year starting. So it's just different, but they're both going to be great.
Yeah. So if Fields was so successful with 1 year in Ohio State, I mean, do you think he could drop off then, because now teams have film on him in that system?
It's possible. I think part of it too is the expectation is going to be so high for Fields that it might just be hard for him to reach that anyway.
Sure.
I don't think there's any doubt that he's better than Dwayne Haskins was. I think that he's proven that. But the hype could just be so high that it'll be hard for him to reach that expectation. I think I guess the ACC is just is worse than the Big Ten. I'm just thinking of who Ohio State plays.
Yeah.
It's weird because the Big Ten is better than the ACC for sure, but the gap between Ohio State and most of the Big Ten teams is bigger probably than the gap between Clemson and the ACC teams. Is that weird to say? Is that incorrect?
Yeah, I would push back a little bit because I would say something like Ohio State, and then you have like Michigan, Penn State,
That's true.
Michigan State, right? But then I do agree you have some like
bottom tier.
Right?
Yeah.
This is very official rankings, by the way. If you're watching the video podcast, you can see the height differences here.
Bro, this is basically how I imagine the playoff committee and why it's so dumb. Yeah. This is what they're doing in there. They're like this, no, we need it there. Yeah.
No, they're just stacking on the whiteboard.
Yeah. That's probably a good point because the ACC was pretty bad. I'm just thinking of like, and I forgot about Penn State, who is always like kind of upset special. But I'm thinking of like Clemson almost lost to North Carolina last year. It felt like Clemson had a few close games, but I mean they ended up in the national championship. So is what it is. Yeah,
I think that just is a product of the home environment. Clemson was at North Carolina in college. Like the home field, playing home and away, I think really matters in college.
Yeah.
And then there's still kids, so anything can happen.
Sure.
But they still found a way to win every game. So I give them credit for that too.
And I think too, it's just in my mind, Ohio State is such a big brand. Like it is. I know Alabama has been dominating, but like the brand of Ohio State is just bigger than anything else in college football. So in my head, they just feel so much bigger than the rest of their conference. But
anyway, they really are. So we'll see how this Heisman field shakes out. I think there's always sort of a dark horse that gets in the mix at some point. And then the last person I'd want to talk about for this list is someone we both mentioned before we started recording, and that was Spencer Rattler, the new quarterback for Oklahoma. Only got some garbage time, I think, last year, but he was highly touted, of course. And then we know what Lincoln Riley has done with quarterbacks, with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and then Jalen Hurts. Wow, I blanked on that for a second.
Yeah.
So what he can do, and I think it's going to be exciting to watch them.
I know Oklahoma fans are excited. One of the guys that I teach with, he's actually head of the history department, really cool dude. He's diehard Oklahoma fan. A fun fact, he commutes from Oklahoma every day, if you can imagine that.
Oof.
Yeah, but we're pretty close. We're pretty close to the border, so he's a stud.
I guess.
Anyway, he and I talk about Oklahoma all the time. Like every time we see him, I see him and stuff. And he's really juiced for Spencer Rattler, really juiced. Yeah. And this is a guy who multiple Oklahoma games every year. Like he lives he knows everything about it, and was really down on Jalen Hurts. Like really, really did not like last season. Just having to watch Jalen Hurts. So he's excited for Spencer Rattler. I know that concerns have been like it's not even like off the field. Like he doesn't. It's not like he's gotten in trouble with the law or anything. But he kind of has a reputation, and he had this reputation. So he was a senior when I was coaching in Arizona in 2018, and like he just is known for being like I don't know if partying. Partying might be the right word. You know what I mean? Like he just likes that spotlight kind of deal, and feels a little Johnny Manziel-ish or Baker Mayfield.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Which probably isn't fair because Johnny Manziel was like doing drugs and stuff, and that's not what I'm saying about him. But he's Gronkowski might be the best. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Gronk, who just loves to be in that spotlight and stuff, and that can be fine. Again, look at Gronkowski, like he thrives off that. Yeah. But who knows if he'll get distracted? I don't know. But the talent is there. And he's with Lincoln Riley, so no Oklahoma quarterback is going to have a bad season. It's just whether he's going to reach those expectations or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, to your point, it's not really a mindset you see in successful quarterbacks necessarily. I mean, obviously Johnny Manziel was probably more extreme than Rattler. We'll see. But that didn't really pan out at a professional level.
Sure.
And then Baker Mayfield was, more calm than Manziel. and probably just had this sort of like arrogance about him.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, hit or miss. He's up one year, he's down the next year. So we'll still see on Mayfield. But yeah, to your point, really what people are looking for in a quarterback. You want a little more like composure, maturity,
Sure.
things like that. So he's young. Heck, at 19, I can see everybody at some point goes through
Sure.
that phase or
Well,
deals with it. So I think he'll turn it around. He'll figure it out.
yeah, and when you're the highest recruited quarterback
Yeah.
in the nation, like, yeah, I don't blame the kid at all. It's and
For
it's
sure.
if he can stay focused and have a balance to it, like, more
Mhm.
power to you, dude. Like, I don't care. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's what the vibe I was getting from the people I'm plugged into with the Oklahoma program. That was the vibe I
Yeah.
got from them. So, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. Thanks for leveraging those connections
You're
to
welcome.
get the best contact for Gut Check
I
here.
can't give you any names, obviously, because I got to keep my
Sure.
relationship strong with those sources. But
Sure.
that's what they're texting me. So
Okay.
yeah.
It was Mrs. Riley. We all know.
Whoa, whoa, that's no good.
All right, so we'll move on. The people we want to talk about, we all picked about 3 players just to talk about, and I'll stick with quarterbacks. And while we've already talked about the Big 12, I'm repping my UT hat to talk college today, and my eyes are going to be on Sam Ehlinger for sure. Texas, 2 years ago, going into the Sugar Bowl, beating Georgia. Sam famously, or maybe now infamously, saying Texas is back, and then they have a down year the next year. More so down expectation wise, right? They didn't win the Big 12. Baylor came out of nowhere, surpassed them. You knew Oklahoma was going to be up there. But looking at Ellinger, he had his best season statistically. He was completing over 65% of his passes. He had 32 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and over 3,600 yards passing. So he was there. He was carrying that team. I think the defense dropped off a little bit. They had a tough schedule with playing LSU, the national champions there. But I think this season right now, I mean, it's his last season. Feels like Ellinger's been on the team for 20 years, but it's his final season of eligibility. So a lot of people are going to be watching him. I'm excited to see what he can do because I think he's getting better about when to run, when to pass. And if he can build off this season statistically, he's in the running for the Heisman for sure, but only if he can get this team to really just a one loss at worst.
Yeah, yeah. For him to realistically win the Heisman, they'd have to win the Big 12.
Absolutely.
Probably Big 12 and have to. And if they win the Big 12, there is no way they're out of the playoff. There's no way that committee is not going to put Texas in.
Yeah.
Don't even sigh and look at me like, well, there's not a situation. They're gutting in because of the brand.
Okay.
I'm
Fair enough.
But I like Sam Ehlinger. I think he's gonna have a good year. I think that he'll bounce back. I think that I'll say this. I don't know how much of a Tom Herman guy I am anymore, and so I think that's gonna limit him as like team success as a whole. Not that Herman has all the controlling pieces over Ehlinger, but
Sure.
just like the team as a whole, I think they've definitely made some steps and they've climbed the ladder a little bit, but he hasn't, like, I think from what people have expected, like, he hasn't hit that yet. And I don't think Oklahoma's going anywhere. Obviously they're just gonna restock every year with the talent. It helps that Matt Rule just left Baylor, so maybe Baylor takes a hit, but I think Ehlinger has an uphill battle. I really do. And he needs to beat Oklahoma, and he needs to win the Big 12. But I love the story. I love Ellinger's been like, he's a Texas kid. Like, that's his dream, and he's living out his dream that we all had when we were little, and it's going to be a great opportunity and be a lot of fun. His senior year, you can't hold anything back now, right? Just try to get it done and make some history.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm not ready to rule on Tom Herman. I mean, I think just where Texas was not too long ago to where they are now is a big improvement. So I'm
Uh-huh.
willing to give him, a couple more years. I think, we'll see. I don't think they've taken any big regressions back, which is good, but I think it was just a bad look to go in to upset Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and
Yeah.
then not compete for the Big 12 championship the next year. I
Uh,
think that dip is what we're worried about, but if he can pick it back up from there, get back to the Big 12 championship game, then his job is secure. But that is a high mark to make. I mean, he needs to be in that Big 12 championship game.
So Texas and Michigan, they're literally the same program right now. Like they're in the
Yeah.
same situation. They have, which it's just weird though because Texas for the longest time was like the older brother, but
Hmm.
Texas can't for whatever reason can't get through Oklahoma. They did beat them a couple years ago, but then
Yeah.
lost.
Sure.
But Michigan can't get through Ohio State, and it's the one thing about college that is so funny is like in the NFL like you might lose to a certain team every year in your division, but if you make the playoffs, like you can kind of move forward.
Yeah.
In college, there's not a big playoff system, so you have to beat your rival. Like if
Hmm.
you're losing consistently to your rival every year, like it's just a bad look, and that's what you're going to be measured on. And it's a little disappointing Herman hasn't had more success there, just like Harbaugh hasn't gotten it done in Michigan.
Yeah.
So those are two programs to watch for sure. Sorry, not to derail what we're talking about, but that's what I was thinking.
No, not at all. So who's top on your list for who you want to watch?
So does it have to be my top, or is it just
Just who
like
you want to talk about first.
someone I want to talk about first? Well, I guess I'll do my quarterback to start. We talked about. I told you who it was, and most of you probably don't know who this is.
Mhm.
Maybe, I don't know, but Trey Lance, who is quarterback for North Dakota State this year. And I'm going to tell you why I'm interested in Trey Lance, okay? I was listening to a podcast the other day about it was Ryan Russillo, and I think it was Daniel Jeremiah who was kind of just going through his top quarterbacks for this coming year, like coming into the draft and stuff, and how he would have them ranked. And Daniel Jeremiah, I feel bad if it's not him, but whatever. Hopefully he listens, gets mad, and gives us a bunch of publicity if it's not him. Goes on this podcast and he says, my goal was to watch a bunch of film on Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, decide who was number one, who was number two, and then try to figure out what other quarterbacks could go in the first round of next year's draft. And he said he watched the film, and the third guy he watched was Trey Lance. And after watching Trey Lance, he is convinced he's the best quarterback in this draft,
Wow.
and that he should be taken as the first quarterback in the draft, depending on who's quarterback needy, right? And he just says when you watch the film, you watch the tape, his athleticism, where his eyes goes, and his decision making is just next. It's just next level, and you can get into. If he plays at North Dakota State, you can do all that, and that's certainly a factor into this whole deal. But he's like, but this dude has some of the things you just can't coach, and it also helps. Carson Wentz has been as successful as he has coming out of North Dakota State. I'm guessing, Matt, that now that I have mentioned Trey Lance, that you have pulled up his statistical page, and I want you to read two things for me, okay? I want you to tell me how many touchdowns he threw, and then I want you to tell me how many interceptions he threw.
He has 0 touchdowns and 28 interceptions. Is that right?
You're a
Oh
punk.
no, I switched that. 28 touchdowns and 0 interceptions.
0 interceptions. Now, if you've ever watched North Dakota State, they're going to play a lot of power football, play action type of stuff. I know they get into they do get into some spread looks. So this isn't just like a dink and dunk type of deal. And he had plenty of opportunities to throw interceptions, but Daniel Jeremiah just was talking about that, like he just makes good decisions, and it's not just like decisions on that play, it's understanding a feel for the game. So like if someone throws 28 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, you're expecting a lot of screen games, a lot of check downs, like not taking risks. But if you watch the film, Like he at the right times of the games, he'll push it downfield. He just doesn't take any unnecessary risks, but he's willing to push it downfield when it's time. And anyway, I'm excited to watch. And the last thing I want to say about him is game 1 for North Dakota State, assuming everything goes how it should. They're playing in Oregon. They're playing at Oregon in Autzen Stadium, and that's going to be like my favorite game to watch week 1 because I want to see how he does, and that's what Daniel Jeremiah brought up. Like that game is going to be huge for a lot of these scouts. Like how does he play against a Power 5 conference like this? And I can't wait to watch. It's circled on my calendar, and I think Trey Lance is going to be a first-round pick for sure.
Yeah. No, I mean, Trey Lance was a name I saw as soon as, I mean, I admit I didn't know the name like before this year, but as soon as the NFL draft ended, his name jumped up as being, the next quarterback to watch outside of some of those big names. Mel Kiper right away had him number 15 on his big board. And yeah, his numbers are extremely impressive. Like to your point, it's not dink and dunk. He was averaging 9.7 yards per attempt, which is a big number. I mean, Joe Burrow had 10.8, but if you're over 9, I mean, you're not just passing the ball, just short, quick slants and stuff like that. So that's impressive. Any system, no matter what you're doing, 0 interceptions. Is just incredible. So I think it'll be interesting to see, and definitely watching when they go and play a Division 1A team in a big program like Oregon. Let's see how he steps up to the plate.
Yeah, and I just want to throw out there a little FCS plug. Like FCS football is some of the best football to watch because I'm not gonna say most of those teams can't compete. They just can't. But like you get a group of kids, all of them have a chip on their shoulder because they all felt like they should have been Power 5 kids who are here now, and they just play with so much heart. You eliminate a lot of the like, I'm a 5-star recruit, I've always been the best, like look at me, I'm going to the league. You just get kids who are just willing to run through a brick wall to prove how good they are. The best college football game I've ever seen, I saw it live, was when I went to JMU Weber State semifinal game in Virginia, and that hands down the game ended up like 38-35. JMU won it on a field goal, but it was some of the best football I've ever seen in my entire life, and I was like, I can't believe this is an FCS football game. It was so good. So anyway, so if you're looking for a reason to get into FCS football, just turn it on to watch some Trey Lance and see how good they are. And when they play Oregon, like that could be game, like what is it? Game of the week, college game day. Like that potentially could be where they go. Why would Oregon schedule this game? This game cannot help them in any way. If they win, no one's going to give them any credit. And if they lose, it's going to derail. They're done. So just interesting.
Yeah. It's all about money, I'm sure. On both sides. So we'll see there. I'm going to stick with quarterbacks as well. The people I wanted to talk about, it's all quarterbacks really, and I do stay kind of homer with my picks, but I'm not ashamed of it. This one, KJ Costello, grad transfer from Stanford, now at Mississippi State. And the reason Mississippi State is even in the news again, outside of them trying to change their flag like they should have done 160 years ago, but because Mike Leach is now their head coach, and huge Mike Leach fan from back when he was beating Texas at Texas Tech to now Washington State behind me, and then of course now Mississippi State. I think having him, quick side note, him, Lane Kiffin, Nick Saban, like those guys in the SEC, I think it's just going to be crazy. Both Lane and Mike Leach in the same state playing each other every year is going to be fun to watch as well. But what Mike Leach can do with quarterbacks is impressive. I think anybody who's been watching college football knows, obviously, getting Gardner Minshew into the league and what Minshew has done in his one season in the league. He arguably could have been Rookie of the Year. Aaron Gordon, his last guy who just got into the NFL, didn't get drafted, but picked up by the Seahawks. So now KJ Costello, He was injured last year, so he only played 5 games at Stanford. But before that, when he was healthy, he was completing over 65% of his passes, almost 30 touchdowns, 11 picks. Not terrible. But what we see with Leach, it doesn't take long for quarterbacks to come into a system and learn it and be successful.
Mhm.
He's successful with these transfer guys as well. So just going back, Anthony Gordon, the last guy he had, into 72% completion percentage, just tearing up. And then, of course, led the league in passing yards at almost 5,600. Gardner Minshew, which is a great example, which I loved, when he was at Eastern Carolina, was a 58% passer. His 1 year with Mike Leach in Washington State, he was 71%. And then the final thing that I think KJ Costello is going to bring to the table that maybe these other guys didn't, Mike Leach gives a lot of control to his quarterbacks, where he just goes out there with a formation and the quarterback is calling the plays like the majority of the time, no matter what the situation is. So KJ Costello, coming from Stanford, obviously a very heady guy, very smart guy, is going to understand this system, and he can just go out and call these right plays in the right situations and then execute. So it's 1 year. It's going to be tough for a new team and all that, but I think KJ Costello is going to come in there, and I think the SEC is going to be pretty surprised by this new Mike Leach offense that they have to face.
Yeah, everywhere I go, Mike Leach is like everybody's favorite coach, which is weird from like he's never won a national championship, and he was good at Texas Tech and good at Washington State, but obviously like in Arizona and now in Texas, like that's who they talk about. But you should be excited. I'm sure KJ Costello is going to have a great year from that fact, being in a Leach system who loves to throw the ball. And I read one time Leach is like 60-70% of the time, like he just runs verticals down the field. And his deal is if you can just teach the quarterback how to read it, like you could run it every play, because you can't stop it if you run all verticals down the field. Defensively, you cannot cover everybody. You just have to have a quarterback who can read it and get the ball out on time. But that's a good pick. I like it. I'd love to see not Michigan. I would love to see Mississippi State do something big and shock some people. Even if it's probably not this year, in the next year or two, see them do some stuff and kind of dethrone Alabama and LSU from the SEC.
Yeah, and just the last point quickly, I think it's going to be cool to see a big high-powered offense in the SEC. I mean, we saw that a little with LSU 1 year with Joe Burrow. But if this is truly just this team that's just going to throw the ball 60, 70 times a game, the SEC really hasn't seen that, and it isn't known for that, or at least hasn't been known for that in recent years.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's going to be fun to watch for sure. So my second guy that I'll talk about, this one will be quick. I had to throw a running back in here, obviously.
Of course.
Just because of who I am, but I'm going to go Najee Harris from Alabama. I don't know how many of you are in the business of watching Alabama football. I found that Alabama football is so polarizing. It's everybody either refuses to watch Alabama football or they're like diehard want to watch just to see it happen. But Najee Harris last year, 1,200 rushing yards. He averaged basically 6 yards a carry and had 13 touchdowns. I loved this kid out of high school. He's taken longer to become a star than I thought he would. But I think this is his year to go in and hopefully show that he's like a first round pick. I know that is like a late first round pick just because of the premium on running backs. But he's a kid out of Northern California. He's just a monster when he wants to be. It feels like he doesn't always play with the same level of intensity. But he showed last year that he can be the guy. 1,200 yards, 6 yards a carry is absurd. And we don't really know what Alabama's going to look like this year. Tua's gone now. Tua's brother transferred. It's gonna look somewhat different. We know that they still have those great group of receivers. You could argue that this group of receivers, like they have a couple receivers that might be better than both Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, depending on what you value. And so the run game should be open because of that. And I think Najee Harris is going to have a good year. And if Alabama wants to be in the playoffs, just because you don't have like a Tua coming back or even a Jalen Hurts coming back, like there's some questions there. I think you're going to have to ride Najee Harris. He's going to need to like lead the SEC in rushing and really carry them. I'm sure Nick Saban has a plan. I'm sure that he's not coming to me for advice. He knows what it's going to take to win the SEC, but Harris is a guy I'm excited to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, exactly to your point, Mac Jones is their projected starter at quarterback. I'm sure he's fine. He came in relief of Tua and played okay. He couldn't get it done against Auburn, but that was a close game. He'll get more reps. But yeah, if Alabama wants to win this thing, they need to get back to what they do best, and that's playing defense and running the ball.
Sure.
And so you could see it being like a year with Derrick Henry or Mark Ingram, something like that. So Harris could very well be in the Heisman discussion, especially if Mac Jones is taking a back seat and Alabama is successful through their running game.
Sure.
I mean, very possible.
Sure. Yep. We can move on. We don't have to talk about Alabama anymore. We can move on. That's fine.
Fair enough. People were getting close to turning us off there.
Yeah, exactly.
So then the last guy I want to talk about, another quarterback, another home team, but someone I'm just very excited about because I want this team to do well, and that's Cleveland Slovis, the quarterback for USC. Came in as a true freshman once JT Daniels went down with an injury. And just even though USC wasn't all that great last year, he was putting up some big numbers. They beat Utah, if I remember correctly. But just as a true freshman, the number I look at is interceptions, and he only threw 9 compared to 30 touchdowns, getting the ball down the field at 9.4 average per attempt, and then almost a 72% completion percentage, which is just really impressive for a true freshman coming in who wasn't even projected to be the starter from day one. So if Clay Helton can continue to mold that, I mean, Helton is supposed to be the quarterback guy, and that's why the USC is holding on to him instead of Ed Orgeron, which, yeah, why would you want that guy as your head coach, right? So, yeah, let's see what he can do. JT Daniels is out of the picture now. He transferred to Georgia. It's Slovis's show, and everybody's just gonna love saying this kid's name. I don't know the background to this name, but like it is the most. It's like if you played NCAA, the video game back when it was allowed, and you just auto-generated the names, you get a Keaton Slovis on your roster for sure. So yeah, I'm excited, and hey, last thing, Pac-12 is wide open. Utah's gonna be good. Justin Herbert's out of there at Oregon. Mike Leach gone at Washington State. Washington is a new coach as well, so it's wide open for USC. So they better take it.
People are pretty much hopped off the Chip Kelly train too. It is. There are free tickets being handed out for the Chip Kelly train if you're looking for the ride. So yeah, it is wide open. You would have to think that Oregon is still the favorite. I don't know who their quarterback is going to be this year, but I know that they're like an established program. But I tell you what, Clay Helton better get something done this year with a wide open Pac-12, or it's the end of his thing. And I'm a Clay Helton fan just from when I met him last year at that coaching thing. I think we talked about it on here at it was like a coaching conference, and he spoke, and I was like sitting in the front row. I talked to him for a couple minutes before he started, and he's just like a cool dude. And just listening to him talk, he was like, he knows how to lead and inspire. Like, I was fired up. I don't know why it hasn't translated.
Yeah.
But for me, like, I was really inspired. So I'm hoping and rooting for him. And as like, I have like SC, like I know I've been in and out on my SC fandom because it's
just fair.
It's just fair, yeah. But I hope they do well. I hope Slovis gets it done, and I hope a Pac-12 team can sneak into the playoffs. I hope it's SC. That would be fun. That would make my college football season if SC could be into the playoff, because that would be fun to watch.
Absolutely.
So, all right, my last one, and this one is my favorite. This is the guy I'm most excited about. It is Jamar Chase, wide receiver for LSU. And look, LSU, all their offense, their entire offense last year was super productive and really good. And it's probably it's a combination of Joe Brady, who's now with Carolina, as the play caller. Obviously, Joe Burrow was doing Joe Burrow things. But Jamar Chase, and I think most people agreed that Jamar Chase was at least in the discussion for being the best wide receiver last year in the country. And he was an underclassman. He couldn't come out. But I would think Jamar Chase, especially with how the draft played out, with Henry Ruggs going first, so clearly there wasn't a true defined number one. I think Jamar Chase would have been the first receiver off the board. His stats are it's absurd. He had 84 catches for 1,700 yards, almost 1,780 yards, almost at 1,800 yards. He averaged 21.2 yards a catch, 20 touchdowns, and his long was 78 yards. Now, so the main one, 1,700 yards and 20 touchdowns, is astronomical for a receiver. He also, I mean, you could go both ways. Like he was playing with Justin Jefferson, who was a first round pick, who I loved. I really liked. I know Jamar Chase is better than Justin Jefferson, but I really like Justin Jefferson. Maybe that opened things up for Jamar Chase, but no one was doubling Justin Jefferson. Yeah. Like if you're bracketing coverage, you were doing it over Jamar Chase's side of the field. I just think the kid's the real deal. He's crazy athletic. I think he's gonna come in. He's going to blow up this year, assuming LSU has a – I don't know who's playing quarterback for LSU this year, but I know that Ed Orgeron knows what he's doing. He's going to have a great year. LSU's going to do some good things. And then when Jamar Chase gets into the NFL, like he's going to have an Odell Beckham type of rookie season. He's going to come in and he's going to absolutely take it by storm. And so I'm really excited to watch what he does.
Yeah, I think just generally a lot of people are going to be watching LSU to see how they bounce back because, to your point, the offense was so productive that everybody on the LSU offense that entered the draft got drafted or at least got picked up by a team. I think, Moss was an undrafted free agent. So
which was weird. He should have been drafted.
I thought he would have gone higher as well. But, I mean, I went back and I watched a lot of the tape for the LSU Clemson game, and Jamar Chase was just torching some now professional DBs. I mean, they could not stop him. So a lot of that sure is on Joe Burrow, but I mean, he's getting open against the best competition. So I think he absolutely is going to be a star to watch. I think Miles Brennan is the name who's going to be the new LSU quarterback. Okay. He was the one, at least, who was the backup. Didn't have much production, but didn't need to. But when he did get in for garbage time, he played well enough. Yeah. I do think it's not an understatement to say the loss of Joe Brady is a big deal. So that they'll have to replace that, and I think we'll really see, because just looking at Joe Burrow alone, pre-Joe Brady and then post-Joe Brady is a different Joe Burrow. So I think it's going to be a good point to see who replaces him and how they do in that system.
It'll also be fun to see how Joe Brady does in Carolina.
Yeah.
I can't really expect huge things from him with just the situation in Carolina this first year, but I wonder how well his passing schemes and things will translate to the NFL. It'll probably be fine. He'll probably do better than like he's going to have more good seasons than bad seasons, I would imagine.
Yeah. So, I mean, he has experience in the NFL too, so it's not like he just is coming out of nowhere, which definitely helps.
Right. Yeah, man. I liked your picks. I liked my picks better for who to watch, but I still
naturally.
But I just hope, man. I hope it all just comes together. You know what college needs to do? I meant to bring this up when we were just rambling in the beginning.
Mhm.
The NFL just announced that they're gonna. I don't know if you saw this. They proposed and approved this. They're gonna, and I've seen this in like soccer stadiums before,
Mhm.
where they cover the first however many rows of seats or whatever rows of seats. The NFL is gonna
Yeah.
cover the first 6 to 8 rows of seats, and to promote social distancing or whatever.
Mm.
But they're gonna sell ad space on these, and they're gonna
Okay.
make so much money selling ad space on these. It's
Yeah.
such a good idea. But I think that tells you right there, like, you're not gonna be at full capacity in stadiums. They're gonna
Mhm.
promote like less than full capacity, but I think that's a good idea, and I think college needs to do something like that to recoup some of the money that they're definitely gonna lose from this season.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just good that the NFL is picking up on the Jacksonville Jaguars model for the stadiums. You know, they were ahead of the game with tarpon seats.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. So,
all right, that's gonna do it for this episode, though. Fans, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking with us as always. Guys, sports fans out there, just hold on to hope. Right? Keep social distancing, keep wearing a mask, keep yourself and others safe, and we'll have sports back soon. We're heading into July, and a lot happens in July, which we'll talk about with some later podcasts. But baseball's coming back, basketball's right there. Hockey is on the precipice of figuring it out and getting back as well. And then at the end of July, we get some NFL teams reporting to training camp. So just stick with it. Hold out hope. Keep listening to us, of course, for some sanity, and we'll be back before you know it.
I echo everything he said. Just we'll get through it together, I promise.
All right, till next time. Out.